towers and steeples speak of God's presence in the midst of our communities. It is seen in the efforts of all those dedicated priests, religious and laity, who for over 2 centuries have ministered to the spiritual needs of the poor, the immigrant, the sick, and those in prison. And it is seen in the hundreds of schools where religious brothers and sisters train children to read and write, to love God and neighbor, and to contribute as good citizens to the life of American society. All of this is a great legacy which you have received and which you have been called to enrich and pass on.
That story is seen in the many shrines which dot this city, and the many parish churches whose towers and steeples speak of God's presence in the midst of our communities. It is seen in the efforts of all those dedicated priests, religious and laity, who for over 2 centuries have ministered to the spiritual needs of the poor, the immigrant, the sick, and those in prison. And it is seen in the hundreds of schools where religious brothers and sisters train children to read and write, to love God and neighbor, and to contribute as good citizens to the life of American society. All of this is a great legacy which you have received and which you have been called to enrich and pass on.
Most of you know the story of Saint Catherine Drexel, one of the great saints raised up by this local church. When she spoke to Pope Leo XIII of the needs of the missions, the Pope, he was a very wise Pope, asked her pointedly, "What about you? What are you going to do?" Those words changed Catherine's life because they reminded her that in the end, every Christian man and woman, by virtue of baptism, has received a mission. Each one of us has to respond as best we can to the Lord's call to build up his body, the church.
Most of you know the story of St. Catherine Drexel, one of the great saints raised up by this local church. When she spoke to Pope Leo XIII of the needs of the missions, the Pope, he was a very wise Pope, asked her pointedly, "What about you? What are you going to do?" Those words changed Catherine's life because they reminded her that in the end, every Christian man and woman, by virtue of baptism, has received a mission. Each one of us has to respond as best we can to the Lord's call to build up his body, the church.
About you. I would like to dwell on 2 aspects of these words in the context of our particular mission to transmit the joy of the gospel and to build up the church, whether as priests, deacons, members, men and women of institutes of consecrated life.
What about you? I would like to dwell on 2 aspects of these words in the context of our particular mission to transmit the joy of the gospel and to build up the church, whether as priests, deacons, or men and women members of institutes of consecrated life.
En primer lugar, aquella palabra y tú.
Those words, what about you, were addressed to a young person,
a una mujer joven,
a young
con
woman
altos ideales,
with high ideals,
y le cambiaron
and
la
they
vida.
changed her life.
Le hicieron pensar
They made her think
en el
of the immense work
que había que
that had
hacer,
to be done,
y la llevaron
and
a
to
darse
realize
cuenta de que
that she
estaba
was being
siendo
called to do her
llamada
part.
a hacer algo al respecto. ¿Cuántos jóvenes
How
en
many
nuestras
young people
parroquias y
in our
escuelas
parishes
tienen
and
los
schools
mismos
have
ideales,
the same high
generosidad de
ideals,
espíritu y
generosity
amor
of
por
spirit,
Cristo y la
and love
Iglesia?
for Christ and the
Les
church?
pregunto,
I ask you,
los
do
desafiamos,
we challenge them?
les damos espacio
Do we make
y
space
los ayudamos
for them and
a que
help them to
realicen
do
su cometido?
their part?
Encontramos el modo de compartir su entusiasmo y sus dones
Do we
con
find
nuestras
ways of sharing their
comunidades,
enthusiasm
sobre
and
todo en
gifts
la
with our
práctica
communities,
de las obras de
above all,
misericordia
in works of
y en la
mercy
preocupación por los
and
demás?
concern for others?
Compartimos
Do we
nuestra
share
propia
our
alegría
own
y
joy
entusiasmo en
and
el servicio del
enthusiasm
Señor?
in serving the Lord?
First, those words, what about you, were addressed to a young person, a young woman with high ideals, and they changed her life. They made her think of the immense work that had to be done and to realize that she was being called to do her part. How many young people in our parishes and schools have the same high ideals, generosity of spirit, and love for Christ and the Church? I ask them, do we challenge them? Do we make space for them and help them to do their part? To find ways of sharing their enthusiasm and gifts with our communities, above all in works of mercy and concern for others? Do we share our own joy and enthusiasm in serving the Lord?
Uno de los grandes
One of the
desafíos de la
great
Iglesia
challenges
en este momento
facing the church
es fomentar
in this
en todos los
generation is to foster in all the faithful
de la
a sense
responsabilidad
of
personal
personal responsibility
en la misión de la Iglesia,
for the church's mission,
y
and to
capacitarlos para que puedan
enable them
cumplir con tal
to
responsabilidad
fulfill that
como
responsibility
discípulos misioneros,
as missionary
como
disciples,
fermento del Evangelio en nuestro mundo.
as a leaven of the gospel in our world.
Requiere
This will require
creatividad
creativity
para adaptarse a
in
los
adapting
cambios
to
de las
changed situations,
transmitiendo
carrying
el
forward
legado
the
del
legacy of the
pasado,
past,
no solo a través del
not primarily
mantenimiento de estructuras e
by
instituciones,
maintaining our
que son
structures and
útiles,
institutions which
sino
have served
sobre
us well,
todo
but above all,
abriéndose a las
by
posibilidades
being open to
que
the
el Espíritu
possibilities
nos descubre,
which the Spirit
mediante la
opens
comunicación
up to
de la
us,
alegría
and
del
communicating the
Evangelio
joy of the gospel
todos los días
daily
y en todas
and in
las
every
etapas de
season
nuestra
of our
vida.
life.
One of the great challenges facing the Church in this generation is to foster in all the faithful a sense of personal responsibility for the Church's mission, and to enable them to fulfill that responsibility as missionary disciples, as a leaven of the gospel in our world. This will require creativity in adapting to changed situations, carrying forward the legacy of the past, not primarily by maintaining our structures and institutions which have served us well, but above all by being open to the possibilities which the Spirit opens to us, and communicating the joy of the gospel daily and in every season of our life.
¿Y tú?
What about you?
Es significativo que estas
It is
palabras
significant
del anciano Papa
that those words of the
fueron
elderly Pope
dirigidas a una mujer laica.
were also addressed to a lay woman.
Sabemos que el futuro
We
de la
know
Iglesia
that the future of the church in a rapidly changing society will call, and even now calls, for a much more active engagement on the part of the laity. The Church in the United States has always devoted immense effort to the work of catechesis and education. Our challenge today is to build on those solid foundations and to foster a sense of collaboration and shared responsibility in planning for the future of our parishes and institutions. This does not mean relinquishing the spiritual authority with which we have been entrusted. Rather, it means discerning and employing wisely the manifold gifts which the Spirit pours out upon the Church. In a particular way, it means valuing the immense contribution which women, lay and religious, have made and continue to make to the life of our communities.
What about you? It is significant that these words of the elderly Pope were also addressed to a laywoman. We know that the future of the Church in a rapidly changing society will call, and even now calls, for a much more active engagement on the part of the laity. The Church in the United States has always devoted immense effort to the work of catechesis and education. Our challenge today is to build on those solid foundations and to foster a sense of collaboration and shared responsibility in planning for the future of our parishes and institutions. This does not mean relinquishing the spiritual authority with which we have been entrusted. Rather, it means discerning and employing wisely the manifold gifts which the Spirit pours out upon the Church. In a particular way, it means valuing the immense contribution which women, lay and religious, have made and continue to make to the life of our communities.
Dear
brothers and sisters, I thank you for the way in which each of you has answered Jesus' question and which inspired your own vocation. What about you? I encourage you to be renewed in the joy of that first encounter with Jesus and to draw from that joy renewed fidelity and strength. I look forward to being with you in these days, and I ask you to bring my affectionate greetings to those who could not be with us, especially the many elderly priests and religious who join us in spirit.
Dear brothers and sisters, I thank you for the way in which each of you has answered Jesus' question, which inspired your own vocation. What about you? I encourage you to be renewed in the joy of that first encounter with Jesus and to draw from that joy renewed fidelity and strength. I look forward to being with you in these days, and I ask you to bring my affectionate greetings to those who could not be with us, especially the many elderly priests and religious who join us in spirit.
During these
days of the World Meeting of Families, I would ask you in a particular way to reflect on our ministry to families, to couples preparing for marriage, and to our young people. I know how much is being done in your local churches to respond to the needs of families and to support them in their journey of faith. I ask you to pray fervently for them and to pray for the deliberations of the forthcoming Synod on the Family.
During these days of the World Meeting of Families, I would ask you in a particular way to reflect on our ministry to families, to couples preparing for marriage, and to our young people. I know how much is being done in your local churches to respond to the needs of families and to support them in their journey of faith. I ask you to pray fervently for them and for the deliberations of the forthcoming Synod on the Family.
Now, with gratitude for all we have received and with confident assurance in all our needs, let us turn to Mary, our Blessed Mother. With a mother's love, may she intercede for the growth of the Church in America in prophetic witness to the power of her Son's cross to bring joy, hope, and strength into our world. I pray for each of you, and I ask you, please, to pray for me.
Now, with gratitude for all we have received, and with confident assurance in all our needs, let us turn to Mary, our Blessed Mother. With a mother's love, may she intercede for the growth of the Church in America in prophetic witness to the power of her Son's cross to bring joy, hope, and strength into our world. I pray for each of you, and I ask you please to pray for me.
The Pope delivering his homily, asking, do not ask what the Church can do for you, but what you can do for your Church. And again, asking to pray for the upcoming Synod of the Families, the important mission of this whole meeting here in Philadelphia. We're going to take a quick break, but we are going to be back for the offertory and for communion and for the rest of Mass. So stand by.